comments will be recorded for the public record. So please do not disclose any personal information for yourself or your clients as part of our conversation today. My name is Austin Scharf. I'm a senior energy policy specialist here at the Washington State Department of Commerce. Today, I'm joined by a host of folks from the Department of Commerce, but the first one I'd like to introduce is Norma Chavez. Norma Chavez is a Spanish interpreter for us and leads our outreach work in the southeastern part of the state. So James Vogel is running our slide deck, and he is going to turn us to the next slide. If you would like to use Spanish interpretation for this workshop, you can click on the interpretation button there. You will see it pop up on your bar at the bottom of your screen. You will click on it and it will give you the option to turn to Spanish and have a Spanish translation of the workshop for you today. Before we go any further, I'd like to have the rest of our team introduce themselves. So I will turn first to Julia Havens.
Hi, Julia Havens, Community Engagement Managing Director with the Washington State Department of Commerce. Welcome. Thank you for participating today.
And Amelia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amelia Fujikawa. I'm working with the Energy Policy Office as an AmeriCorps Civic Spark Fellow, and I'm looking forward to learning from everyone today. Maybe James next.
I'll go. Hi, this is Steve Dunk with Department of Commerce. I am with the Community Engagement Team and am responsible for the southwest portion of the state. It's good to be here. Thank you.
I can jump in now. Hi, everyone. My name is James Vogel. Took me a little while to find the unmute button there, but I work in our local government division here at Commerce and have been helping Austin and Amelia with this work, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Let's see, I'll pass to Sue.
Hi, everyone. I'm Suing Moody, and I am with the North Central Washington Engagement Team, and I'm also happy to be here and support this work. So thank you for joining us.
And Carlina.
Carlina Braley with Commerce's Community Engagement Team. I serve the Olympic and Kitsap Peninsula. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. And if we go to the next slide, James, while we come from different teams in our work, we share a common mission here at the Department of Commerce to strengthen communities. And beyond our outreach team and the State Energy Policy Office, which we represent, we also work at the Department of Commerce on housing and homelessness, infrastructure and broadband, and a host of other community services, some of which you can see on this slide. And we will go to our next slide, James. We welcome interactions throughout today's workshop. There is a chat function available at the bottom of the screen, and it may be hidden depending on your screen size, and you can click on the More option to pull up the chat. Mind you, we will be facilitating a number of different activities today, and it may take us some time to get to your chat question, but we will do so, and we appreciate you leaving comments in the chat. So we will go over next to the next activity.
Before we jump to that really quick, Austin, can I let Norma come in and just make an announcement to walk people through doing that connection to her really quickly?
That'd be wonderful. Thanks, Julia.
Okay, thank you. So Norma, go ahead and come off of mute and we should be able to hear you in the main room.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Si hay alguna persona que necesita interpretación en español, si por favor puede mirar a la pantalla para ver cómo vamos a seguir con interpretación. ¿Hay alguno? It does not sound like we have anybody that's going to need interpretation today.
Thank you, Norma.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for confirming that, Nora.
Thank you.
Now, we'll move into our first activity today, which is going to be led by Amelia. Amelia, would you like to take this away?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So before we get started on this kind of warm-up activity, I do have a quick poll that we'll administer now. You should see it on your screen. It's just to get a sense of kind of who's in the room and how much experience we've got to pull from today. We'll just give it a couple seconds here. Looks like we've got a wide range, which is awesome. Awesome. That's 100% completion. So thank you all for coming and bringing all of your expertise. With that, we can go ahead and end that poll. And then we've just got some warm-up questions for you all. So the first one is, what is the most inspirational about the clients that you serve? And you can go ahead and use the chat function to input just a couple sentences. You can say multiple things, just to kind of get the conversation and the blood flowing here. I'll give it a couple minutes for everyone to answer this one. We have 3 total. So we've got resilience, incredibly resilient, determined, and strong. The change that we can make in their lives. Improving the lived experience of all women and girls in Washington. Amazing. Intelligence, perseverance, overcoming barriers. Got more resilience. Appreciation for energy efficiency programs or improvements, sorry. Creativity, courage. Awesome. All right. Always thankful. See the responses slowing down so we can go to the next slide, James. Next question is going to be up here. What challenges do you encounter most when serving clients? Application barriers. Navigating the process of applications, bureaucracy, systemic barriers. See a lot of folks talking about barriers and accessibility, navigation issues, time commitment issues like busyness and daily life, language and overwhelm, unnecessary complexity. Mental health, the need to meet clients where they are. Again, language barrier. Institutional racism. All right, and then the last question, next slide. What do clients need to successfully access resources? They need to know what is available to be met where they are, to have patience, knowledge, removing roadblocks and problem-solving skills, time, transportation. They need to know how to navigate the system, know where they can access resources, having general awareness and access to technology, accessibility, explanation of processes and rules, more access to internet, digital literacy, transportation, an address or phone number to call, more navigators, bank account, someone advocating for their needs. A pathway to their goal. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this, you all. We really appreciate you coming to our workshop, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Austin to give us a little bit more background on what we're going to be doing today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all for these comments in the chat. If you have any other things that come to mind, feel free to continue throwing them in the chat for us to consider. This is very important to us, and it's been very enlightening as we've gone across the state and met with folks to hear about everyone's work and the challenges and successes and the stories of the folks that you serve. We're going to move on to the next slide now and introduce how we got to this workshop in many ways. Back in 2019, the state legislature passed the Clean Energy Transformation Act, which is our state's 100% clean electricity law. It puts us on a path to 100% clean electricity by 2045 and includes a number of protections to ensure that that transition is affordable, reliable, and equitable. And today, we're going to focus really on the affordability and equitability aspects of this law and the subsequent work that has come from it. So I'll go to the next slide, James. In the Clean Energy Transformation Act, or CETA, the legislature found that it is in the public interest to ensure that there's an equitable distribution of benefits and reduction of risks and burdens for vulnerable populations, low-income households, and highly impacted communities. That instructs our electric utilities in the state to make programs and funding available for low-income households to help them with their energy bills. This includes energy efficiency and weatherization measures, direct bill assistance, as well as programs that help get solar or other clean energy technologies in the hands of low-income households and those that are most impacted by climate change. There are a couple of other pieces here that you see on the screen to help assess the impacts of the law on these communities. But the most important for today is a part of the statute that requires the utilities to pull together a bunch of data on their energy assistance programs and submit that to the Department of Commerce, where we look at it and aggregate it into a statewide summary for the state legislature. We published our report that following that work and submitted that to the state legislature this past spring. If we go to the next slide, James. And in that report, we found a couple of key pieces of information that I'd like to convey to you today to set the stage for our work. The first is that more than 250,000 low-income households, about 25% of all low-income households in Washington, are energy burdened. That means their household energy expenses for home power and heating exceed 6% of their total income. That is important because there's a number of national studies that show that once that households that spend more than 6% of their household income on energy costs suffer a number of health, mental health, uh, problems that come from losing income to these costs. Now, they may become disconnected from service, among other things. And the amount that those households spend above 6% of their household income is $884 annually. And then that amounts to $234 million annually statewide in energy burden for low-income households. So we will move on. So this is a significant housing and energy problem in the state. We found that the programs that are designed to serve these households, they're largely utility programs. The participation in them is very low. They serve only a small percentage, about 25% of low-income households statewide, compared to individual statewide programs such as a Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, commonly known as food stamps, that have similar eligibility standards. So we can go to the next slide. Upon receiving our report, the state legislature decided that it wanted to look at a statewide approach to energy assistance. That followed the legislature's own request of us to look at a system benefits charge on utilities, where utilities and by extension their customers would be charged an amount for low-income energy assistance. That funds would be pulled to the state level to administer a statewide energy assistance program. Commerce was required to evaluate that, and the legislature said we would like to know more about that approach. And a couple of benefits that we had identified was that there would be universal access to energy assistance. Right now, not all low-income households in the state have access to energy assistance programs. And when they do have access, those benefits can vary widely depending on the utility that's serving that customer. And so another benefit of a statewide approach would be that you can ensure uniform benefit levels across the state. We also identified that you could leverage existing data and IT infrastructure at the state to increase program participation, improve targeting of assistance for those in most need, provide better multicultural services to household, protect utilities that have a disproportionate share of low-income households in their service territory from potential rate hikes, reduce overall administrative costs on these programs, and provide a reliable funding for them. So we'll go over to the next slide, James. So the legislature's request for us to further study a statewide approach to energy assistance is what we're focusing on today. Commerce is required to make a recommendation on a design for a statewide low-income energy assistance program. But Commerce is not required to recommend to the state legislature the creation of such a program, and we will be not making a recommendation for the creation of a program. So what we will be doing is saying, okay, if the state legislature decides that it wants to create a statewide low-income energy assistance program, what would that program look like? How would it be best designed? The legislature and the public will need to decide whether that design or other designs of a statewide program are worthwhile pursuing. So we'll go to the next slide, James. So today we are going to be focusing on the design of a monthly energy bill assistance for households. This is different, and the work that we're doing overall is different from the federal grant-based program to help households with energy their energy bills. That program's called the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, LIHEAP, which is also administered by the Department of Commerce. That program has a number of funding and eligibility restrictions placed on the program by Commerce that make it a much more rigid structure than what we would be looking at designing here. And then because we're looking at monthly bill assistance, that means we are not looking at energy efficiency and weatherization programs, but we acknowledge the importance of these programs and believe that a statewide monthly energy bill assistance program could support a weatherization and energy efficiency program through raising awareness about conservation and pointing folks in the direction of these programs so that they can have more awareness about them and take advantage of them if they have the resources to do so. All right, we'll go to the next section here. So we will, over the course of today, be doing a number of activities. I will stop blathering, and we'll get into some work together. The work that we'll be doing comes from some initial workshops that we held with statewide low-income advocacy organizations and utilities. They developed a set of principles for us around program accessibility and the different types of bill assistance mechanisms that we could consider. I would say there was a fair amount of consensus as we discussed these from those groups about principles and trade-offs, but of course, advocates and utilities have different opinions about a statewide program overall. So I'm going to turn it over to Amelia to lead us through the program accessibility activity. So thank you all.
Great, thanks, Austin. So I'm gonna quickly read through these 12 elements that Austin just described that came out of those workshops last summer. So in the first slide, we have traditional income verification procedures create a barrier to program access, minimize documentation required to enroll, multiple application and enrollment methods, including methods that do not require internet access or travel to a physical location. Next slide. Multiple entities should be able to enroll customers in a statewide program. Program administrator should be able to cross-enroll customers in other low-income assistance programs. Self-attestation with limited documentation and a small random set of incomes verified may be one way to balance program accessibility and integrity. Next slide. Communications and services should be available in multiple languages. Immigration status should not affect eligibility, and categorical eligibility should be provided based on participation in other low income. And then lastly, both outreach and engagement should be conducted with trusted community partners. Utilities could post or distribute outreach materials with consistent messaging, and outreach efforts should proceed. So in our first activity, we'll be having you all join breakout rooms, which Julia will explain in just a second. But our goal is to have you all spend about 20 minutes discussing with the other folks in your breakout rooms regarding if there's anything based on your experiences with the communities you serve that you would edit or revise, or any things that are missing that you would consider as a crucial element. So really just trying to fill out this list and make sure all considerations are brought to our report. So I'll pass it over actually now to Julia to just explain how the breakout rooms will be structured and also how to get in there. I think next slide.
Thank you. I believe that there was maybe a slide. Oh, did you? Okay, so we're going to break you into rooms to kind of talk more about what Amelia just covered. We'll be taking notes. You'll be able to see that and talk about that. So we would love you to go into the breakout room that matches up with the region of the state that you live in or serve. And we have quite a few folks from the orange and the green area right now, it seems, on the call today. So I think that we will just do our very best to kind of figure out what that looks like. If you would like to go to another room, that's perfectly fine. If there's a room with less than 3 people, we will have you move into another space. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to pan out, but I'm thinking that we might have only just a couple on the east side and a couple in Southwest, in Western Washington in number 1. So let's just see how it goes, and then we may move some folks just for the conversation flow. It's a little easier to talk when there's more than just a couple of people in the room to generate ideas. We do have a question from Christina. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, so we serve some in Central and some in Eastern. So, and there's 2 of us in this meeting. Do you want us to separate?
If you'd like to, we can do that and see how it works. And then if there's still not very many folks in Eastern Washington, we can pop back over. I can show you how to
Okay.
do that. Okay,
All right,
thanks.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions before I kind of explain how to set up how to get to the rooms? Okay, so I'm talking and walking at the same time. Let me do this. So next slide should show a quick little demonstration of what this looks like. So you should see a button that says breakout rooms at the bottom of your screen in your kind of like multiple places where you would interact with us. So where you would raise your hand or put a chat message, if you see that little 4-box breakout room button, you will click that and then choose breakout room when I open it. So it's not open yet, so you probably can't do anything yet. If you don't see that, look behind the ... more button, which is next to the end button. That will give you the options to pick breakout room as well. So I'm going to open the rooms. Let's go back to the slide previous, James, so people can see again which number room they're going to go into. And if we did have a room number 5 with Norma for Spanish language, but it seems that we don't need that. So we can have you just join any of the rooms that you'd like at that point. So I will open the rooms. And you should be able to click on, oh, go ahead.
What happened if you're not sure what region? I'm actually, I'm new in Washington and I don't know really where would I fall here.
Okay, do you know what county might be easiest?
Yeah, we cover like Clark, Glenn, Clark,
Yes.
Pierce County, and Snohomish County. We are based in Linwood.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so you can
Right,
just do number 1.
Yeah, in Snohomish County. Okay.
Great, and I'll stay in the lobby just to make sure everyone makes it in their rooms. If anyone has any questions or has any difficulties with the breakout room function.
So we'll have 20 minutes. I don't know if we said that. Did we say that? Okay.
I did, and I'll start a timer as well, so you'll get a little notice in the breakout room.
Clark, yeah.
Okay, and I better go to my room. So I think, Austin, you need to go to room 2. And then Amelia, are you able to follow up with the folks that are still around? Yep. And James, are you moving to your room?
Yes, I can do that now.
Thank you. I got to figure out how to join a room myself as it goes.
I'll start the 20-minute timer in about a minute.
Where is the link where you can choose a room? I think it came up and went, you know.
So at the bottom of your screen,
you could just
should see 3 dots that say more. Do you see that button?
Right.
And then one of those should say breakout rooms.
Don't seem to see it.
Do you see that button? I also see a few others who have not joined rooms yet,
I
so
do,
let me know.
I do, but I don't see anywhere it says breakout. Oh, here, join breakout room.
There we go, yeah.
Yeah, it should be good. Thank you.
You're welcome. I see Colleen and John. Are you all able to join your breakout rooms? Okay, I see they're going. Colleen, do you need any assistance? I'm assuming you might be joining by phone, in which case it might be a bit tricky. But you can also join, you should be able to join by phone. I believe. All right. Looks like everyone has made it back into the room. Welcome back. So really quick, I wanted to do a quick report out. So hopefully there's someone, a spokesperson per group, who can give us a quick rundown on what they talked about within their breakout room. Ideally, we stick to about 2 minutes per group. And yeah, we're taking notes as well as you all give your report out. So starting with room 1.
Sorry to say that I have to run to boys, so I'll come back. I'll join the meeting back.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start for room 1.
Awesome.
So for in the column for principles that we like the most, we focus on principle H, you know, and then principle J and B. And so B was something that was actually addressed more than once and brought up and mentioned in this category. And so oftentimes for H, you know, people are feared about being penalized by government and then they miss out on the needed support. Not all of the languages of clients we serve are not written languages. So I think part of it is making sure that the language access is really important there too. Let's see, sorry, I'm like flipping back and forth between these. Minimizing the documentation to be able to access the services, because oftentimes people give up before they get through that process. Also, you know, looking at how to administer programs, you know, like out of one centralized location, or like being able to do cross enrollments. And then for what we'd like to change or remove, we focused on the outreach part a lot. And so part of the group felt like, you know, where we had some opinion that outreach should not start before a program because it can create confusion on what's actually available or not. But maybe let clients know when the launch date will be. Another opinion was some orgs, though, need time to do the outreach prior to a program launch, especially when working with multilingual outreach methods or depending on verbal outreach. Another thing is looking at like maybe community advocates. And then we did look at F as kind of like a risky thing as far as self-attestation when it comes to income. I think a lot of us think from that audit perspective. And so we're worried, are we going to have to pay the money back? Or is the client going to have to pay the money back? And then as far as principle E for the administrator and cross enrolling, a lot of people do think it sounds like a good idea. We do want to make sure that people are not being enrolled in programs without their knowledge. And then as far as the accessibility principles that are missing and questions around that,
A lot of times there's a question about how long it'll how long it'll take to get that approval for the benefits. Sometimes it can take 3 weeks and anywhere up to 90 days. So kind of having like that reasonable time frame. And we kind of looked at what would that centralized administration look like. And part of it was when you think about a 1-800 number for a program operated by the state, sometimes people get really frustrated with hold times or callbacks, or the callback method. And so they might be deterred from calling like a 1-800 number. And if I missed anything, please someone jump in from our group.
Just came back, so I missed part of your presentation, but I think the last bit that I hear from you was kind of well done.
Okay, great.
Great job, Uni.
Yeah, thanks so much, Uni. Let's move on to group 2 or room 2 with Austin in the Northwest.
Thanks, Uni.
Yeah, thanks, Amelia. I broke from the instructions and accidentally, unintentionally, and didn't assign somebody in our group the report out responsibility. So I will do a brief report out and then have folks jump in if needed, or if I miss something that they would like to raise. Our conversation focused on a couple key items. One was the difficulties that come with having getting assistance in one physical location, particularly for rural areas, and the need to have multiple places where folks can receive help. It would be super helpful to have a more streamlined application process was another piece that we talked about. We noted that in some parts of state that are moving away from traditional verification processes, they're noticing that some folks are not putting the correct information into their documents. And then when they come to apply for other forms of energy assistance like LIHEAP, they often don't have the right documentation because they are confused, or see folks that are receiving benefits on those other programs that do not qualify for those programs. We also talked a lot about how we would then create greater accessibility and have more folks in a program and have more service providers knowing about programs and being able to help folks. We talked about outreach and engagement and using senior centers, housing authorities, banners, other sorts of outreach methods on public transit, pharmacies, other ways to raise awareness about a single program available to all households. I'll stop there and give a minute or so to anybody who wants to add something that I may have missed. And I will say just on, I think Amelia might have already mentioned that we have all these documents and we will summarize all the comments that folks have written up, and they'll become part of our report.
I just want to add, it'd be the multifamily residence versus a single family resident. Yeah, so that whole thing about it is interesting to me, and I would love to hear what comes out of it.
Yes. Thanks, Samantha. Tawny?
For affordable housing providers would, potentially verifying through WeBars or other, funding streams be a way to minimize duplicate efforts. I know at times it seems wild, how many different agencies are verifying the exact same information at the same time, while struggling to fill positions to be able to do the monitoring as well. So I think moving into the future, I'm a huge advocate for allowing more interaction with the housing providers to verify incomes, because that's what we do all day long.
All right, thanks, Tawny. All right, I think our group has reported out.
Great, thank you so much. So next we're gonna go to room 3, Central Washington with Sue and James.
Okay, so I am going to report out, even though I tried to volunteer James, but our team, I have the notes, so I will do it. Anyway, so on the principles that the group liked the most, there were a number, so I'm just going to go through them a little bit. C and D for streamlining and providing easier access for those particularly without transportation or need technical assistance. H, access for regardless of immigration status was desired and considered to be very important. I, for streamlining processes for multiple program access. And then J, that there is no wrong door, that people can get easier access. And then G, with multiple language access, is considered to be very important by the group. And then generally A and B was desired because the idea is that barriers need to be removed for those particularly lacking or without documentation. For example, Social Security, that it has been an issue at times. And then also those that don't have access to the internet to be able to do to access the programs themselves. And then E, the idea that an easier process is needed, which would minimize the length of time that is required for enrollment to access programs, and because people need help right away, and to not have that waiting lag time be extended any more than necessary. So reducing that amount of time for quicker access to the programs. On the side of what would you change or remove, there really wasn't much there was no discussion on not liking anything that was listed. We did, however, move to the third category in identifying things that might be missing or had questions on. So I'll move there and say what was recognized as not listed was an idea that maybe cross-pollination of information from multiple programs could be helpful, but recognizing also that by doing so, it could also be a potential problem for those lacking access to electronic devices and digital equity issues. So again, it was not a simple thing, but just putting it out there as being something that was not listed, but recognized as maybe needing further conversation or discussion on. What was missing and what was desired to be added was financial literacy aspect. That is one of the things that when providing program access, that the idea would be to better provide clients education courses or training on how to better save financially for the future and position themselves to be in an increasingly better position. So that was one thing that was considered to have been missing from the list, and that could be something that would be maybe desirable to add. There were 3 questions that were posed, and I think some of it was for clarity. One is the potential to use self-sufficiency index as a measure of eligibility. It's something to be considered, looked into a little bit further. So that was one of the questions. Has that been considered? Another question was, can the amount of assistance vary or include higher cost areas needs? Basically, the idea is that in certain parts of the state, is giving winter as an example, there could be a higher electric bill because of the cold in those areas. And so with that being the case, just keeping in mind that it's not an equal dollar amount, even if the rates are the same. So I think that was the point that was being made. And then a final question was, and if outreach and engagement is considered to be important, which it was, then how are these individuals or groups going to be identified for that particular outreach? And the same consideration should be given to utility companies' notices and opportunities for assistance. Basically, outreach needs to be targeted to be effective, and who's doing that. So consideration needs to be made for the methodology, the methods of how outreach and engagement are performed. So that's how our group just discussed, but I want to open it up to our group here on anything that I might have missed or you'd like to add. Okay, my thing is hearing none. We're gonna give it back to you then. Thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. And lastly, we'll move to room 4, Eastern Washington with Julia.
And I did the same mistake and didn't ask if someone wanted to report out. So does anyone from that room want to report out, or I can go and you can add? I know a couple of people have had to leave the meeting, so let me just start and then please jump in if you have other things that I haven't talked about. One of the things our team or our group mostly focused on things that might be missing or questions about accessibility. So some really important considerations that maybe are not listed so clearly are that this program may not be overly beneficial to folks that have no electricity or alternate fuel for a heating source. And so kind of thinking about that in messaging and in program design. Residents that are new to communities like immigrants and refugees may not know what kind of weather to expect. So thinking about an education program that helps people gear up for times where there is an increased burden on energy use to keep warm or stay cool would be really helpful. Education and some resources that are in language for other providers to make reference and referrals to the clients in other languages would be very helpful once there's established administrators or providers of the program to help people enroll. Ways to address emergencies. I don't know that we have had that one come up yet, so I was really excited to hear that. How quickly we need to be able to take action sometimes is limited by processes, and so thinking about how there could be an emergency process if needed, especially when the fuel types are all different and those vendors are all different. Immigration status and farm field workers are often not able to apply for certain benefits because of the way that their income is figured. And so thinking about time of year for salary in the enrollment part and trying not to increase the barrier there and reduce the barrier for sure. What else? Translated materials came up quite a bit in terms of other partnering agencies, working with sub-grantees to implement named communities. And so just hoping that there's an opportunity for that, data sharing with DSHS, and enrollment periods that are longer than a year for people to kind of just get settled and not have to keep enrolling would be really helpful. Any others that you all mentioned in our group in Eastern Washington that I didn't call out? Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your report, Alex. Everything sounded like each group had a very fruitful discussion. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break and let everyone kind of get up and stretch, use the bathroom, whatever you need to do. We'll do 5 minutes. So let's try to be back on the call at 12, let's say 17. Very specific, but we do have another activity to get into and we want to make sure we have enough time for that. So we'll see you back in 5 minutes.
Thanks, everyone.
We hosted in the summer and early fall of this year. And so we're going to run through all 3 options together, talk about some benefits and drawbacks that folks identified in those initial workshops. And then when we break into our breakout rooms, we'll have a chance to talk about benefits and drawbacks together. And then at the end of this activity, we'll have a little poll where folks can share their preferences in terms of which bill discount option they like the best and which they might not think are quite as good. So keep that in mind as we're talking about these both here and in your breakout rooms. So getting into the first bill discount option, or this is, excuse me, an overview of the three different options. So there's a flat percentage discount for all program participants, a tiered percentage discount based on income, and then a personalized benefit amount or discount percentage based on household energy burden. Getting into that first option, the flat bill discount, this is probably the most straightforward to understand. Under this option, all of the participants in the program would receive the same percentage off of their monthly energy bills. And speaking briefly about eligibility, I know we talked about this in Sue and I's breakout room, but the income threshold that's been talked about for this program is the greater of 200% of the federal poverty line, or 80% of area median income, whichever is the greater. And that would align with the Section 120 definitions as well as with SNAP eligibility standards. And so far, stakeholders have identified two key benefits to the flat discount option. One, that assistance would be proportionate to energy usage, and two, that less household information would be required to administer the program. Program administrator would just need to know whether a household is eligible or not. They wouldn't need any more specific information about income or energy use. In terms of drawbacks, folks have identified that funds would not be targeted to those with lower incomes, and would also not be targeted to households with higher energy burdens. And then the second option that was identified in those initial workshops was a tiered percentage discount based on household income. So under this option, households would receive a percentage off of their monthly utility bill that would vary based on household income, with the idea being that households with lower household income would receive a higher benefit percentage, and households with higher income would receive a lower benefit percentage. So it gets at some ideas about equity versus equality. And there's talk too about kind of benchmarking these benefit percentages to kind of an expected energy burden for a household in a given tier. And again, when we say energy burden, we just mean the percentage of household income that's spent on utility bills. In terms of benefits for the tiered percentage, folks have identified that obviously households with lower incomes would receive a greater benefit than households with more income. In terms of drawbacks, folks have identified this is not energy burden specific, but again, those benefits could be kind of benchmarked to target estimated levels of expected energy burden for a household in a given income tier. And folks have also identified that this discount option could be more difficult to administer than the flat percentage option, and would present more barriers to access than the percentage discount. Obviously, the administrator would need to know, not an exact figure for household income, but would need to know enough to be able to put folks in the appropriate tier. And that third option that was talked about in the workshops in the spring and summer, or the summer and fall, excuse me, was a personalized amount based on energy burden. Under this option, households would receive an amount off of their monthly energy bill to reduce their bills to a specified percentage of household income. The specific number is not necessarily as important as the general idea that this option is just accounting for energy burden and targeting capping household energy burden at a given percentage for all the households enrolled in the program. Benefits for this option that stakeholders have identified, it's obviously the most energy burden specific of the three, so would account for things like differences in seasonal energy use, greater energy needs in certain parts of the state. But some drawbacks would obviously require the most information the program administrator would need, both household income information and household energy use information. And there's been a concern expressed amongst some folks that it would discourage conservation more than the other two benefit approaches, since your energy burden would be capped at a certain point. So are there any questions about any of these options before we get back into our breakout rooms?
Quick question. Is the assistance, is it per statement or is it per season? How do you
That's a good question. The idea is it would be per statement, so it would be monthly.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing any hands or hearing anyone,
Sorry.
so, oh, sorry.
So my question is the tiered program would resemble how housing providers use housing choice vouchers, and the tiered payout similar for those that are service providers on here that are familiar with it? Is that what you're kind of mimicking or speaking about?
I'm not super familiar with the structure of the housing
It's the housing
voucher
choice
benefit.
vouchers.
Yeah. From what you've described, I imagine it would be similar. I think that when folks were talking about this option in our workshops in the summer and fall, SNAP and TANF were two programs that people pointed to as having similar benefit structures. There's also some utilities with existing assistance programs that structure their benefit programs like this. Avista is one that comes to mind. Tani, I see your hand up.
Thank
me?
you. I wanted to write it
Oh.
down because I can get lost in my thoughts. I think for me, because I was thinking to myself, this is so specific to the resident, depending on those things we spoke about in the prior room, right? Whether there's going to be cross application options and such, right? So for example, if you have people that just want to take advantage of that 20% discount or whatever, and they don't want to deal with the paperwork, they just want whatever's easiest. This is good for me. I'm good. They can apply for that. But those who are applying as part of a cross application to additional programs or part of a cross verification system, whatever type of reporting, I think ultimately I just implore not adding any type of additional requirements for verification, audit, etc. It just seems very redundant, very, very redundant. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks. Mamadou, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I think my question may be probably very broad and maybe out of limit, but I'm just curious to know in the development of this program and your anticipation for the future. When would this actually start? Like, is it going to be 2024, 25 that this will be in place? Do you know?
That's a great question, and Austin, I'll let you jump in if I speak out of turn here. But the deadline for this work that we're doing right now, the program design study, is July 2024. So that's when our report will be published and sent to the legislature. So the earliest that the legislature would be able to consider whether to create a program and potentially incorporate some of these recommendations would be the 2025 legislative session.
Gotcha. Well, at least thank you. That gives some indication. Appreciate that.
Yeah, sure thing. Austin, did you have something to add there?
No. This is would be a large undertaking for the legislature and for whoever would end up administering a program, if the legislature were to enact it, would need time to stand the program up, etc. So if the legislature were to do something with it in 2025, laws tend to go into effect in the summer, and then it would take time to stand it up, et cetera. So this is a very large program, as you can imagine. Even if you try to reduce all the barriers and everything else. But the idea here is to put together a design for the legislature as they've requested and submit the report to the legislature this summer, as James said. So.
All right, unless there are any other questions, I think we can go ahead and head to our breakout rooms. Amelia, do you want to stick with 20 minutes for this discussion, or?
I think we'll do a tiny bit less. The goal will be to kind of get back in here to do the last discussion around 12:40, 45. So we'll see how 15 minutes goes, but that'll be kind of where we'll start. So we'll go ahead and open those.
Can I ask a quick question? I think when I read through the literature, it says that Commerce will not be putting in any recommendations. You just got to present a report of what people talked about. So if that's the case, and I know the legislature is very busy, what materials will they have available that they can just pick and say, well, we're going to implement this? Do they have to go through seeking recommendations, or how will that be done?
I'll take that question really quickly, and happy to follow up after the call or at the end of the call if we have additional time. So the legislature has requested that Commerce recommend a design for a statewide program. So thing and that thing, and it would, fund, money would be moved from this area to this area, or, different things. This is how we would do outreach. These are the eligibility requirements. That's what would be written up in the report. And, there are a number of different competing designs, and so Commerce must recommend a design. The legislature would then decide whether or not it wanted to consider implementing that design or any of the other designs. So we're not going to go forth and recommend that, yes, legislature, you should go enact this. We're saying if you choose to create a statewide program, this is what we would recommend you do.
Thank you. Thanks. That'll help.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms again. You should all be able to join the same ones that you were in before, and your facilitators will be in there to have your discussions with you. And we'll try to be back in the main room around 12:45, and I'll continue to send out those reminders as time gets lower. Thanks, everyone.
So it looks like Grace may have left and came back, so that bumped her out of her room assignment. So I'm not sure which room Grace was going to go to or went to before, but you can choose.
Wait, how do I choose a room? Where did it go?
Which region of the state are you in? Amelia can help you.
I can assign.
What was that?
I can assign you to a room for you. Which region were you in before?
I was not in region. I'm in Western Washington.
Okay. I can go ahead and assign you so that you can go there. Let's see.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. You'll be in room 1. There you go.
All right, Amelia, I think we're all back.
Looks
Do,
good.
do we still have James?
Yeah. Let's go through and we can start with group one. Just give again a quick minute recap of the discussion you had, and then again, like James said, we'll be doing a little poll at the end of the report outs for the ranking preferences. So room one, Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah, hi, this is Jonah.
Okay. Pennsylvania.
So
Peninsula.
a handful of things we talked about. One was it possible to put together a 2-option program where a real low barrier entry, but maybe less benefit. And then a second option would require some more additional paperwork and maybe a longer term solution, which might tie into some other comments later. For instance, like an immediate 20% off, but while you do more paperwork, you might get a better personalized option based on your situation if you're willing to do the legwork to get there. And then there was comments about people living on fixed incomes. Really their income isn't going to change and their energy usage patterns are probably similar. So that was kind of the second option. That was probably good, but also sort of the hybrid option where, everybody's energy usages are going to be different and the amount of legwork people want to put into it. And then we talked a bunch about tying the assistance to energy conservation within the homes. So as a requirement or an added benefit option would be to receive, say, weatherization or other energy efficiency upgrades to the houses as a requirement or a second benefit. And then let's see, ideas on how we balance incentives with conservation kind of ties into the same. And then so that there's not this like every year a large subsidy going to the same inefficient household, whereas we can make the household more efficient, which makes the program more sustainable because we're not paying large subsidies every year, whereas we pay the large subsidy once, make the house more efficient, and theoretically the housing burden goes down. So that kind of ties into that the sliding scale, where if you make the house, the first year a really inefficient house with a low income person in it gets a big subsidy, but make the house more efficient, and the next year it'll be less of a burden, so less of a subsidy. There was talk about looking at average bill over time versus just like spikes in energy usage as well, to calculate those subsidies. And then, yeah, that's kind of it. Like just trying to make a little bit more equity. So it's not a, if someone applies in August when energy bills are lower versus January when they're higher, it'd have to be a little bit more calculated like that. I think that's it. Group one, was there anything I missed?
All good. Anybody else?
Great. Thank you, Jenna.
Great. Let's move on to room two, Northwest region.
Okay, I'll start, and if anyone from my group wants to chime in and add anything that I missed. So the main theme, I think, among all of us was equity of the program and ensuring the funds are distributed to those struggling the most, those who need it the most, and also equating the low barrier portion with that, because the census data, as someone pointed out, may not be accurate due to some undocumented folks not reporting for fear of and so that was a very important point. We did speak a little bit about where the funding was coming from, but I'm not going to get too deep into that since there's 3 different buckets, as it were. But essentially, one of the things that came out of it was the people of the state are not going to react well to any additional taxes for this type of thing. I think that was something folks felt in agreement. you know, or I'm not sure what the current benefits assistance charge that's already put onto utility bills, or if that was something you're saying. I didn't quite catch that, Austin, if I said it right, but as part of the way to fund the program, if you were to keep it, you know, just energy solely on that. Oh, and there was concerns because of, you know, of already seeing energy assistance programs running out of money, and folks' bills are going up the same time. So there was some interest in qualifying based on income versus the self-cert accuracy to ensure that folks qualify. You know, and I would suggest 50% AMI and below, or wherever, you know, let us know what your benchmarks are that are you're going to determine that. But really, equity being equity based, addressing the racial disparities within the system and the accessibility. Another thing I would add that I didn't get to say to my program, or to our conversation, was you spoke earlier about the budget, the overall state budget, or in our room, we were speaking about that. And, you know, they may not want to spend as much money on a utility program. They may want to take those funds and put it more into XYZ, right? So it's like take from Peter to pay Paul. My ultimate statement to y'all is putting whatever you can into affordable housing accessibility is going to make the largest immediate impact on folks, as it's difficult enough to reach people that don't traditionally think they apply, you know, especially undocumented folks who do qualify for tax credit programs, but don't currently qualify for full benefits and HUD programs unless there's a household member involved. So I think these are really important things to take into consideration as far as the immediate impact in trying to bring folks into affordable housing assistance, and also rental assistance as well, so that we're preventing homelessness, because as we know, we're in a housing crisis.
Great, thank you so much, Tawny. Okay, next let's go to room 3, Central Washington.
Okay, I'm going to report again. And so for the first option, it was agreed that there are pros and cons that are listed are all relevant, but because of the potential drawbacks, it's just only acceptable if it's really the only option for assistance. Either you have no option, if this is the only one, then okay, but otherwise it was not considered to be desirable. Being that equity is the biggest issue with this model, and wondering if there was another option that would be better to, with some modification that would make this seem more equitable. But some questions came in regarding other heat sources and the increasing cost of those sources that are not considered in this model at all, or this particular option. And so the conversation was that regarding data as to whether or not there's data to support the varying types of heating sources out there currently that vary across the state: propane, natural gas, electric, wood, etc. Recognizing that the higher energy burden could be different based on the different fuel sources that are not reflected necessarily in utility billing itself. That was one of the comments and questions. The other thing is, another question was whether partnerships could be developed with various fuel and utility providers to reduce cost burdens which are respective to those particular communities, reflective in that part of the state. On the tiered percentage-based income, it was said that this option is considered a potential compromise between the two other options, with consideration that a potential tier option maybe should not only be based on income, but take in other factors such as consumption and the types of fuel and energy sources, again, that vary across the state and regions. Another comment was that consideration for ASHRA, which is an energy metric calculation that pertains to insulating factors versus the consumption of heat, potentially that could be a more equitable consideration based on the region's and the climate and temperature changes that exist with it and across the state. So again, those to address more the equity aspects that vary from region to region. And finally, the last option was considered to be the most equitable option, but really due to the barriers that exist administratively to really administer it, it was seen to be insurmountable challenge potentially to actually implement. So that was the overall comment made on that one. One general comment for all of the options is that home ownership and versus those renting was not distinguished upon for all of the options and maybe could be considered. And a question that's relevant to all options is pertains to whether or not this program is limited to only electric utilities, and particularly because there are other recognized heating options that exist beyond just electricity as a source of heat and energy burden. And so I'm going to ask the team, our group, if I missed anything or if there's anything else to add. Okay.
I would just clarify that when talking about rentals, right, we're just talking about rentals that are where rent and heat or rent and utilities are together. In many rentals, they're actually separate. So those would not be disqualified, I think, from our current kind of program design.
Thanks for that. Thank you. Anything else? Did I miss anything else? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
All right. And lastly, let's go to Eastern Washington with Julia and try to keep it really quick. I know we only have a few minutes left and want to respect everyone's time today.
Yep. And our last comment, or one of our first comments, was the last comment about people being excluded who have heat included with their rent. So considering that, considerations around the verification of income, they do have success with that at Avista, as well as several other of the Southeast Washington County utilities implementing that process as well. So wanted to make sure everyone knew that. And the other thing was making sure that community is aware with resources and language access to support being able to use the utility benefit, however that is created. So thank you.
Awesome. And Julie, I think you can go ahead and administer that poll. I'll try to get the voting in just so everyone has a chance to distinguish their preferences and we can collect that information.
Yep. So just in quickly describing this, you're going to pick your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. It'll give you an opportunity to pick all three choices in this little matrix of which you think are most desirable for community benefit. We know there's caveats. We know that you like to combine them. So just do your best. There's lots of other data that we have from the in-person sessions where we've collected this as well. So we wanted to make sure you had a chance to do that. But we also know that there is some squishiness that often likes to come with that one.
Austin, while these are rolling in, do you want to kind of go ahead and start on closing us out?
Yeah, well, I just want to thank everyone again for their time, sharing their expertise with us. We will be following up. We have your email with some materials. The next step in our process is to continue working on our report. We want to continue to do our regular workshops with utilities and statewide advocacy organizations, and we'll be looking to work with low-income households who are interested in this work to better understand their needs and their preferences. So please, if you're interested, you can reach out to me on this document, but we'll also be following up with you with the PDF talking about next steps. Our report is due in June at the end of June for the legislature, so we'll submit that over to them about that time. And we'll keep you apprised of where we are in that process. So if you would like to participate in further opportunities, you can do so. James, will you move over to the next slide, please? So on our CETA Energy Assistance webpage, which you can just Google, you'll find our main webpage, which you can find on the next page here, James, or C. And you can sign up for our regular bulletin. This includes everything related to our 100% clean electricity law, including energy assistance. If you'd like to follow along with this some more, we'll send this information along in our email. So we're 1 minute over. I wish we had more time to talk. You always feel free to reach out to me if you got questions, things you thought of later today that you weren't able to share. Julia's thrown some files and information in the chat. So we will leave that there for folks if they want to click on it, but recognize that folks may have other places to go. So we'll give it a minute or two for folks to pull that information. I want to thank you again, and hope you have a great rest of your week and a great weekend and great Martin Luther King Day. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you.
Are you going to email the recording to